I'll let you know right away that I am not a Warhammer 40k fan. All I know about the series is what I briefly learned when I played the fantastic real-time strategy game Dawn of War in 2005. At least, I remember it being fantastic, it was almost 20 years ago. So from my superficial knowledge of the series, it seems pretty cool. Beyond that, I played a few hours of Space Marine and it was pretty cool too, and that's about it. So if you're coming here expecting a video from someone who understands the complexities of Warhammer 40k lore, you're looking in the wrong place. This game, Boltgun, to me is just a fast, violent sci-fi shooter. That's how I'm approaching it. And before I get into it, this video is sponsored by the game's publisher Focus Entertainment, and I've done a few videos for Focus at this point. Click the link in the video description for more details if you're interested. If you know my channel at all, you know that I don't take a sponsorship for a game that I don't like. Boltgun is pretty damn good, you have my word on that. The first thing that had my attention was the marketing, unabashedly and boldly calling itself a boomer shooter, because boomer shooters, just like any other genre, can be amazing when done right. They know their audience, and as far as I can tell, this game is bound for success. It's got the over-the-top violence, the speed and mobility, the chaos, the classic 90s level design, 2D sprites, and an 8-weapon arsenal. It's brutal, it's challenging, it's engaging. It's about a 10-hour playthrough, perfect length for a replay, and if you're looking for a good shooter time, it's the title to pick up right now. The last good shooter I did a video like this for was Dread Templar, and I'm happy to say that I think Boltgun sits right up there with it in terms of quality. It has a pretty fun art style, there's a good amount of level variety, there's secret hunting, and there's a cute little Easter egg where if you stand still, your character pulls out a copy of Harry Potter and starts reading. I only recently found out that Warhammer 40k and Harry Potter share the same universe. I had no idea. Cool, right? Now, let's get into how this game works. When I started, I wasn't sure what difficulty to pick, so I just went with hard, and unfortunately that was a mistake. I'll say that if any of you are old school FPS veterans, you should immediately go for the highest difficulty. If you don't, then most likely the majority of your experience will be quite tame, except for the high pressure arena fights, which only happen once or twice per level on average. I played for a few hours on hard and decided to restart on the highest difficulty because I just wasn't finding the pressure I was looking for. I would have preferred to be able to bump up the difficulty while already in the game, but alas I could not. Even though I had to start over, thankfully the highest difficulty delivered, though there are some absurd difficulty spikes much later in the game. However, there is no option to start a new game, only to continue the one you've already started. You have to delete all your saves to start a fresh game on a new difficulty. I'm assuming this is an oversight, because there's no reason to not be able to start over like this. We should be able to just add more saves into the save file list, with each save labeled for its difficulty, or at least give us a save profile option so we can have different profiles running different campaigns. There is a level select option, and that's nice, but we need to be able to start a new campaign without deleting all our save data. When I go into a shooter these days, I almost immediately go into the stress test. I check how easy it is to just mindlessly mash buttons and see how far it takes me. In Boltgun, that would be the chainsaw option. It locks onto a target from a decent range and insta-kills them. On a larger target, it connects to them and you can mash melee to cut them apart. For a while, this worked really well, but pretty soon I got to a point where I was taking massive damage by hopping around chainsawing like this, and I had to rely on my pistol, the titular Boltgun. As the levels progressed, I felt more and more pressure to experiment with the rest of my arsenal. Weapon utility, ammo limitations, reloading, self-damage, it all played a part in my moment-to-moment decision-making, and that's exactly what we talk about on this channel. Player accountability, creative incentive, and clear communication of a game's core systems. When we talk about the fun zone on this channel, we aren't just talking about options. We're talking about how a game gets you interested in those options, generally through a system of consequences for not engaging with them early on. Boltgun succeeded in getting me to experiment with many of my options, to the point where I started enjoying them a lot, and ended up using them even when they weren't necessary anymore. That's the final goal of the fun zone, that even when you don't need to use the options anymore, you keep doing it because you're hooked. For many of my viewers, that should be a selling point right there. Pretty quickly, the mechanics start coming together, and the end-of-level arena fights start testing your skills. The smaller enemies do their best to keep your focus off the primary targets, making the fights last longer. The pressure keeps turning up and up, leading to some insane adrenaline-filled slaughterfests that you can't help but laugh during because there's so much carnage. It really is a beautiful thing when you find the multiple weapon, movement-focused flow this game offers, and it stays strong all the way through. The game features both manual saves and checkpoints, so you could save scum if you wanted to, but you know these titles have to be played on the honor system if you're familiar with the genre. And much to my delight, checkpoints do not restart you with full health, so you are actually motivated to take care of your HP level as you move forward, or else you'll be fighting for your life in some of the arena challenges. You also don't lose any weapon upgrades when you die, which is nice. You never end up with that defeating feeling that you missed out on something cool just because you died before you could use it. Right before you take critical damage at low health, your character gains an invincibility shield that lets you go find health for one last try, but it's not exploitable because once you lose it, it's gone for a while. It's a very welcome feature because this game gets really crazy and you can just get hit out of nowhere sometimes. Levels feature many secret items, like full level upgrades for a specific gun that change its properties, like doubling the ammo for the Boltgun or adding ricochet to the shotgun, timed power-ups like infinite ammo or increased damage, and several Boltgun specific upgrades that help this starting weapon have a place in the late game as other weapons start to outshine it eventually. That's a great idea. Imagine if the original Doom had secret upgrades that buffed the starting pistol, giving it a limited number of high-powered shots. It would help the weapon not be forgotten. Great idea. Enemy AI is simple but effective. At times, Boltgun feels a lot like a bullet hell game. Lots of projectile dodging. And you're going to be taking damage constantly because enemy attacks are fast and frequent. There is no healing mechanic, so you'll need to go looking for health when you need it. Chaos Marines go down after a few seconds of concentrated fire, Terminators are really tanky and spray long attacks of chain gun fire, and the Aspiring Champions will run straight into you if you don't take them down. If you don't explode their corpses, there's a chance they'll be resurrected as chosen champions, and now you've got a real problem. Enemies have different levels of resistances, explained in the menu as strength versus toughness, which is something I think maybe you need to be a Warhammer fan to understand, because I don't follow. I've seen that some enemies take more damage from certain weapons, which is fine, but the whole toughness level is something that went over my head, and I think it could be much better explained to a newcomer. I just ended up using whatever gun felt right at the time, and ignoring the enemy toughness thing altogether. Your character abilities are the Chainsaw Attack, which can be good for finishing a large enemy when the coast is clear, and Air Stomp using your character's weight after a big jump that can damage or even kill enemies under you, and a Charge Attack to push enemies away or kill them, which feels a bit underwhelming since the run distance is so short. It's cool that it can be used to extend jumps though. There's a lot of good platforming opportunities in combat and exploration. They probably should have tutorialized this mechanic because its combat utility isn't well communicated and I largely forgot about it. I'm sure there's some crazy tech behind it and it's actually the best move in the game. Mayo, you're so stupid. Go ahead and comment about how dumb I am, it's fine. In a lovely boomer shooter style detail, if you jump while you're not running, you can hold run in the air to accelerate your movement. It feels wonderful. You don't have full air mobility, but there is a decent amount of control. Grenades are very useful in Boltgun, and there's an abundance throughout the maps, so use them a lot. You've got a typical AoE blast, but also a focused explosive that does massive damage to a single target. Great for taking down mid-level threats, and just getting rid of a problematic enemy by taking off half his health right away. There's also a vortex grenade here and there, hidden away in secret areas, and is incredibly powerful. That's 3 grenade types, and you have to switch grenades before throwing them. It would be great to have the option to just throw any grenade you want, because cycling through them is tedious. The grenade arc is wonderfully intuitive. You lob it like a baseball and it goes right where you want. There's nothing I hate more than an awkward, wimpy grenade toss, and this game gets it right. Having a constant supply of grenades helps a lot in combat, allowing you to focus down certain big guys to clear the board. There doesn't seem to be any kind of targeted damage in Boltgun, no dismemberment, and no bonus damage for headshots. I'm fine with that, it's old school. It's refreshing to play something and not be thinking about headshots all the time. Just blast them, it's nice. I mentioned the Boltgun has temporary upgrades to get you to keep using it, and that's because the heavy Boltgun is an absolute beast. High damage, no reloading, and long distance precision. The heavy Boltgun is your workhorse weapon. The only downsides are the wind-up speed and the fact that it slows you down while firing, making it harder to dodge projectiles. But when the moment is right for this gun, it shreds. All the weapons really are awesome. The mine launcher, the vengeance launcher, is a really great runaway weapon because you can just fire it all over the place and blow up anyone pursuing you. Attach it to walls at a distance to easily take out snipers, or just shoot it down a long hallway and blow up whoever's there. The grav cannon is a devastating power weapon that makes quick work of the biggest enemies on the board, very useful for the annoying giant frogs. And this shotgun, really satisfying when you get the ricochet upgrade. I think it makes it more powerful or gives it a penetration ability or something, because it just feels monstrous like this. I just want to kill everyone with it. Plasma is excellent for certain enemies that take a lot of damage from it, and the splash damage capability makes it almost like a rocket launcher, great for controlling large groups of annoying fodder enemies. The longer you hold fire, the faster it shoots until it overheats, an aspect unique to this weapon, and a plasma shot up close will do self-damage, so be careful. And now that I've mentioned the plasma, I'm gonna take a moment to address what I see as a big issue in Boltgun. Plasma shots do not allow input buffering. So the guns allow for animation cancelling. At any point in the firing animation, you can switch to another gun. You can do fast firing multi-weapon combos, or dead swap the shotgun like in Proteus for rapid fire. I didn't use this on my first playthrough, but I imagine you can do some pretty cool stuff with it. The only gun that doesn't allow you to cancel the animation is the plasma rifle. Okay, if they feel that's necessary for balance, fine. But on top of that, there's no input buffering. So if you fire a plasma shot and press a button for another weapon, the weapon will not come out when the shot finishes. You have to wait for the full firing animation to complete before you're allowed to press a button, instead of the system remembering your requested input. And it makes using the plasma in combat a lot more awkward than it should be. There's other cases of the game having a lack of input buffering that feels more like an oversight than an intentional design decision. Like the charge attack. If I press a button to switch weapons while in the charge animation, I should come out of the animation with that weapon, instead of having to wait to switch. Details like that can reduce a lot of frustration in high-level play, and I hope they make that change. Hopefully it's already been fixed by the time you see this. Anyway, level design in Boltgun is for the most part intuitive and impressive. At first, through most of episode 1, a lot of the levels kinda felt the same, but if I've learned anything in my time on YouTube talking about indie shooters, it's that episode 1 is usually when the developer is figuring out how their game works, and when episode 2 comes around, it's gonna be a significant improvement because they've learned so much about their process and can get a lot more ambitious. We've seen it happen in Dusk, Dread Templar, Hrot, Ultrakill, and it's certainly the case in Boltgun. While episode 1 is largely these similar industrial castle-like environments, episode 2 and 3 greatly expand the world into fantastic and unique environments that keep the experience fresh level by level. The fights are more intense and creative, the traversal is more fun and thoughtful, and there are a lot more interesting visuals and color palettes that set things apart. In the majority of levels, it was pretty easy to figure out where I was and find my way to the next door. A lot of the time, the maps naturally guide you through and deliver you back near a previous door now that you have the key. But at times, I got pretty lost and was desperate for a map. It's puzzling that a game with maze-like levels and multiple locked doors and key hunting wouldn't have a map. I didn't understand it in Quake, and I don't understand it here. On top of that, your little robot guide speaks to you regularly in the upper left corner, and it's very easy to forget about. When he actually says something useful, like where you should go after completing an objective, I didn't even have time to notice that he was talking to me, much less read what he said. And there's no way to pull up a log of the last things he said to you. So if you missed a message about where to go, then you're out of luck. I'm not saying we need a waypoint system or compass or anything like that, but a map would be nice, and I'd like to be able to recall the most recent messages from the bot. Overall, the levels have really good pacing. I'm just a little disappointed in the lack of mission variety. We don't need to be doing a lot in a boomer shooter like this, the action is the focus, but we could have had more than just key and switch hunting. Looking at Proteus, just having occasional missions where you have to shoot and break something adds a surprising amount of fun to the simplistic structure. It's odd that Boltgun doesn't have a single moment where you have to shoot something in the environment, given that the game does have aspects of environmental destruction, albeit minimal. Boss fights are okay. Boomer shooter boss fights are rarely the highlight. Going back to the OGs, Doom, Quake, Duke Nukem 3D, they were typically just big sprites that shot powerful attacks at you and you ran in a circle. Big, annoying bullet sponges. Here it's basically the same, but they throw a lot of common enemies at you to keep you under pressure. Maybe too much as you get into the later levels. You'll see what I mean when you get there. The fact that enemy spawns are randomized even when reloading checkpoints makes it hard to come up with a strategy in some of the late high pressure fights, and I'm sure some people are gonna really struggle. There's not a lot of variety to the bosses, some of them repeat, and they're okay for what the game is. If you're expecting Genichiro or Sephiroth, you're gonna be disappointed. Performance-wise, the game ran mostly fine for me. These retro-style games tend to be kind of deceptive in my experience. They're running these old-school graphics, pixelated, low polygon, so my PC isn't stressed out. It's like, yeah, 120 frames all the way, baby. And then the levels start getting more ambitious, they start throwing 30 enemies at me all at once, everything is exploding, and the frame rate drops to 40. I don't think it's an issue of optimization. I think these retro games tend to just go overboard because they think they can get away with putting in a ridiculous amount of enemies and effects just because it's a retro style game. Still, even with some moments of slowdown, the game was mostly a smooth experience for me. I could always control myself well, never had a crash or a crazy bug other than some bosses getting stuck on textures here and there. And that's Boltgun. It's awesome. Another great game secures its spot in my best of the year list. I definitely recommend it to anyone in my audience, to anyone who's into indie shooters. I think you'll have a great time. Thanks again to Focus Entertainment for sponsoring this video. It was a pleasure to play Boltgun, and I look forward to more quality titles. Later, everyone.